Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're going to continue with applications that we started in our previous lesson. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The big difference today from yesterday is sometimes we're going to have tables and sometimes we're not. So if we look at number 1, Emily decided to open a side business of cleaning people's bathrooms. The following table represents how much money she makes in relation to how many bathrooms she cleans. So if we look at this table, it's asking us what the slope is. So just like when we figured out the slope from tables with no meaning, we can figure out the slope here. Remember, x is always on the left and y is always on the right. So let's figure out our change in y. To get from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, what did we have to add every single time? Awesome, we went up by 20. So we are counting by 20. If you look at the x column, going from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4, what did we do? Good, we just went up by 1. So our slope, remember slope is always the change in y over the change in x. So my change in y was 20 over my change in x, which is 1, or we would just say a slope of 20. So what is the y-intercept? So remember that the y-intercept is always where x is equal to 0. So if we look at this point over here, x is equal to 0. So what is the y value? It is also 0. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is if Emily cleans, so we say if Emily cleans 0 bathrooms, how much money does she make? So if she cleans 0 bathrooms, she makes $0. Okay, so now what does this look like as an equation? Well, remember our slope-intercept form is y is equal to mx plus b. So we have y is equal to my slope, which is 20, because remember we said our slope was 20 in the first part, x, and then we could say plus 0, but do you typically walk around telling people what you have nothing of? No. So our equation is simply just y is equal to 20x. All right, let's look at our next one. It says a sailboat begins a voyage with 145 pounds of food. The crew plans to eat a total of 15 pounds of food per day. We need to know what the slope is. So we need to look for our keywords. Remember before we had said wherever we see words like per or each, or even words like an hour or so, those all tell us who gets the X. So if we look at this, it tells us 15 pounds of food per day. So that means 15 gets the X. So my slope is 15. Now, the y-intercept is always talking about where did we start? This is our starting value. So starting value. So how much food did they start with? 145 pounds of food. Now I want to take a moment and go back and look at the equation because we identified our information, but we didn't actually think about what's actually happening. So if we're starting with 145 pounds of food every single day and the crew is eating 15 pounds a day, is it going up by 15 pounds a day or is it going down? Right. It's going down because they're eating. And because it's going down, you need to be very careful and add a negative to your slope. If your slope is going down, it's decreasing, it should have a negative sign. Now that I went through and made sure that my slope makes sense in the problem and that I have a y-intercept, I can write my equation in slope-intercept form. So to remind me, it's y is equal to mx plus b. So I have y is equal to my slope, which is negative 15, x, and then my b, I'm starting with a positive 145 pounds. All right, now that I've developed my equation, I can go through and write how much food is remaining after 6 days. So y is talking about how much food is left. It might be helpful to kind of define this. Y is how much food is left, how much left, and x is referring to the number of days because it's each day. So I'm going to take that 6 and I'm going to substitute it into my equation for x. So y is equal to negative 15. Instead of saying x, I'm going to say that 6 and then plus 145. So y is equal to, if I either use my head or use a calculator, I find out that after 6 days, I will have 55 pounds of food. Okay, now letter E is saying how long until we run out completely. So if I run out of food completely, how many pounds do I have left? Right, I have 0 pounds. So that means y is equal to 0 pounds. So this means that I need to set my equation equal to 0 and solve. So now I have 0 is equal to negative 15x plus 145. So in this situation, now I'm just solving a two-step equation. How do I move a positive 145 over? Great, I'm going to subtract it. So minus 145 to each day, or each side, sorry. So I get a negative 145 is equal to a negative 15x. Now how do I get x all by itself? Great, I divide both sides by negative 15. Again, be careful here when you're dividing. Really watch those negatives. When I divide this out, I get 2 negatives that give me a positive 9.7 is equal to x. Now we need to think about what this represents. This is how many days till I'm going to run out of food. So we have 2 options we could write down. We could write down 9 days, or we could write down 10 days. So let's figure out which one makes sense. The question is saying, when will I be completely out of food? Is it on the 9th day? Well, no, because I still have some food left over because of that 0.7. So how many days till I'm completely out of food? It is on day 10. So after 10 days, I will be completely out of food. Okay, let's go ahead and look at another one. So on the back side, we have Sally. Sally earns $18 per hour plus a $75 bonus for meeting her sales quota. So again, I'm going to look for my keywords. I see that I have written down 18 per hour. So as soon as I see that word per, I know 18 gets the x. So my slope is 18. The y-intercept is asking, where does it begin? Where does she begin? So at what number does she begin at? Well, she gets a $75 bonus, so 75. Now I'm going to go back and relook at the problem and make sure everything makes sense. So Sally is earning, okay, so she's earning. Does that mean her salary is going up or is it going down? Good, it's going up. So is my slope positive? Yes, my slope is positive, so I did that correctly. And then plus a $75 bonus, so I have all my correct information. So now I can write my equation. I have y is equal to mx plus my b. So now I can take my 2 pieces of information and substitute it into the equation. So I have y is equal to my mx, and that 75 is a positive 75. And what is my slope going to be again? I kind of left that out of the equation. So let me go ahead and erase that really fast. Silly me, I did not put my slope in there. So my slope was 18. There we go. So y is equal to 18x plus 75. So now I can answer my questions. So the first thing is saying, how much does she earn if she gets paid 50 or she works 57 hours? So if we kind of go back for a minute, so it looks like y is equal to her total pay. And because x says per hour, that means x is the number of hours. So if I look at where do I put 57 hours in for, that's going to go in for x. So I have my equation, y is equal to 18 times those 57 hours plus 75. So y is equal to, okay, let's think about this for a minute. If I have 18 times 57 plus 75, you can either use your head or your calculator, and you would find out that she makes, remember it's dollars, so we're going to label it $1,101. Okay. Now looking at letter E, it works out nicely because we defined our variables. So letter E is saying how long till she earns a total of $1,011. And I know it looks really similar to letter D, but notice that the number is slightly different. So total, that means y is equal to that 1,011. So when I set up my equation, it says how long, so I'm looking for x. I have 1,011 is equal to 18x plus 75. So now that I put the numbers in the correct place, this is where I have to follow my equation solving steps to solve it. So my first step would be to minus that 75 over. Good. And when I do that, what do I come up with? Great. 936 is equal to 18x. Now again, I'm trying to get 18 by itself, so how do I do that? Man, you're on fire today. Great job. We're going to divide both sides by 18, and we find out that x is equal to 52. And now make sure you label it. Are we talking about what here? Well, x is the number of hours, so 52 hours. I feel like we can go ahead and go through one more problem. This one's actually pretty quick. Instead of having an equation that we need to solve here, we're actually just going to talk about what the numbers represent. So it says Matthew has a job of stuffing envelopes. Instead of saying each month, we're going to say, instead of saying each week like your notes say, I changed it to say each month. So each month, he must stuff 1,000 envelopes. The number of envelopes left to be stuffed can be modeled with this equation right here. And it tells us that E is the number of envelopes left to stuff, and X is the number of days worked. So we want to know what 1,000 represents. Now remember, this 1,000 is my y-intercept. This is the y-intercept. So if that's my y-intercept, what does it represent? Well, that's how many envelopes he starts his month with. So how many envelopes Matthew starts his week with. And then looking at letter B, it says, what does the negative 25 represent in the equation? Well, it says x is the number of days worked. So what happens each day that he works, each x? Well, it goes down 25. So this is talking about our slope. And so what is the slope? Matthew stuffs 25 envelopes each day. Envelopes each day. Now remember, by saying the word stuff, it means that it's going down, and that implies that negative sign that we see in our equation. All right, great job today. Of course, as usual, feel free to go back and rewind and rewatch parts of the video that may be helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to see your teacher. Otherwise, I think you guys are ready to do your classwork. If you have any questions, like I said, see your teacher. Have a good day. Bye.